Good morning to the Honorable Ministers of the Council, members of the media, online viewers, radio listeners via St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9 FM and respective radio stations island-wide. I'm Rolika Roach and welcome to the live virtual Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, June 3rd, 2020. At this time, I would like to invite the Minister of Finance, the Honorable Artwell Edion, to address you. Minister Edion, you have the floor.
Good morning to my fellow ministers, the media, and all of you tuning in this morning to this press briefing. The union has officially responded to our proposal. It has not been discussed as a council of ministers as yet. I appreciate the union leaders understand the terms we are placed under and working with us while we still are working in the best interest of those that we represent. I will now give a brief update on the SRP. The St. Martin Stimulus Relief Plan, I would like to thank, first of all, SLV and the SMDF and everyone that's working tirelessly to review and carry out payments for recipients of the SSRP. Thus far, 479 applications for business payroll support has been paid. There have been 790 unique applications thus far for unemployment and income support. Of these, the SMDF has screened already 520. Processing these are a little bit more complicated than the payroll support, as they are cross-referenced by the SLV and the financial aid program for duplications. A total of 137 have been approved thus far, given the reviews and screenings are happening continuously. The deadline to apply for income support has been extended until June 22nd, so please apply as soon as possible. Payments are ongoing, and both entities have been working hard to get the money to the people and to the companies as quickly as possible. I'm once again asking employers to give the people the necessary documentation to apply and receive the stimulus support that they need. Procrastination on your end means a delay for funds on their end. I would also like all eligible employers of the business payroll support to keep their employees informed as to whether they receive support or not. I am fully aware that keeping your employees informed may be difficult at times, but we are all circumnavigating through this pandemic together. Patience with each other through the difficult period can only help. With that being said, I would like to implore employers to pay employees as soon as the funds are received. The financial squeeze this virus has put on us makes payments a time-sensitive matter. Also, having money circulating in our local economy gives everyone an opportunity to earn. This is why it was necessary to execute the stimulus and relief plan. I would also like to remind eligible employers of the business payroll support. Government is there to help subsidize a maximum of 80% of your payroll. This provision is given to the employer to help fulfill their labor contract with the employees, instead of laying off employees. Enroll as soon as possible. The deadline for the business lockdown payroll support is extended until June 5th, this Friday. That will be all.
Thank you, Minister Edion, for your opening remarks. At this time, I would like to invite the Minister of Justice, the Honorable Anna Richardson, to address you. Minister Richardson, you have the floor.
A pleasant good morning to the Council of Ministers, support staff, members of the media, online viewers, and radio listeners. I'd like to bring a few updates from the ministry this morning, and I know I was missed last press briefing, so I'm going to make up for that just a little bit. Thank you for your indulgence. On May 22nd, 2020, the director of the FIU Department, Ms. Likia Stella, received a draft report from the CFATF for review before the CFATF publishes the final report as it relates to St. Martin. I'm happy to advise that the CFATF notified St. Martin in its 11th draft follow-up report that the additional information St. Martin had submitted at the end of April 2020 was sufficient and received high levels of compliance with the recommendations. So I'd like to say that St. Martin is looking very positive with the CFATF. We have also been encouraged to apply to move from the third round to the fourth round. Efforts continues to meet the regulations and recommendations of the CFATF. As it relates to matters with the Ombudsman, on Monday, June 1st, 2020, the Ministry of Justice had a meeting with the Office of the Ombudsman, and a streamlined approach to handling cases of the Ombudsman has been established. Planning and Control Officer Mrs. Saskia Thomas Salomons is now identified as the complaint liaison and will ensure the proper handling of all Ministry of Justice matters and cases that are provided by the Ombudsman. In the past, the Ombudsman has expressed challenges with the ministry by not having a systematic structure in place to ensure that clients' matters were handled in a timely manner. As Minister of Justice, I see the relationship or having a relationship with the Ombudsman as being an added value, as it is going to assist us with knowing where we need to strengthen policies, laws, and operational structures. Updates as it is provided by the CAPASM. CAPASM has been carrying out general controls over the past few weeks, with the main emphasis being on curbing the increase in car theft on the island. During the ongoing investigations, officers have uncovered a major car theft ring in which the perpetrators stole the cars and immediately resold them below market value to unsuspected buyers, who were eventually notified by the investigators. It is for this reason that the police is urging the community to follow these simple procedures to avoid purchasing vehicles, which is a criminal offense, to prevent them from becoming victims of these scenarios. When buying a used vehicle, never make a financial payment for the vehicle without first getting a detailed and signed bill of sale from the seller. The buyer should also request underlying documents that go with the vehicle that the vehicle that is being purchased. Please note that all documents that should accompany a bill of sale when acquiring a second-hand vehicle are the following: a copy of the seller's driver's license, passport or ID, the buyer's valid driver's license to show that they are the owner, a copy of the vehicle's last insurance policy and inspection, the original bill of sale as well if it is from the front side, and have the vehicle inspected by an authorized insurance broker or even an inspector from the inspection department. The Coast Guard would like to share with St. Martin that even during COVID, they have maintained their service to protecting the shores of St. Martin. There are going to be certain steps that are going to be published pretty soon to give guidance to maritime as to what steps and measures must be taken when vessels are going to be coming into St. Martin and leaving. That is it for now, but I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Minister Richardson, for your opening remarks. At this time, I would like to invite the Minister of Tourism, Economic Affairs, Transport, and Telecommunication, the Honorable Ludmila De Wever, to address you. Minister De Wever, you have the floor. Minister De Wever, can you kindly unmute your mic?
Rose, I'm sorry about that. Thank you, Ms. Roach. Hear me okay?
Yes, Minister, we can hear you.
Please let me know when we have any issues, because I see my having a connection issue. So just maybe in the chat, that'll be fast. So let me know, please. Sorry about that. Again, let's start this back. Good morning, Honorable Prime Minister, colleague ministers, members of the press, Ms. Roach, and the viewing and listening public. I am pleased that things are reverting to a sense of normalcy whereby some economic activity can resume. It is no doubt that the livelihood of many has been affected during this pandemic and our state of emergency. However, the reports that the virus is being contained island-wide is promising for our economic outlook, though there is more to be done in terms of economic recovery. I would like to take this time to congratulate my colleagues, in particular Prime Minister Silveria Jacobs, the Emergency Operations Center, and the support teams, all frontliners and essential workers, and the people of St. Martin for their hard work, commitment, and sacrifice to ensure the safety of all. As we continue to move through our third phase of the reopening of the island, it is important for me to announce that St. Martin is looking at July 1st as the earliest date that we can open the airport. There is an internal deadline of June 15th where any required guidelines on visitors coming to the island will be finalized and communicated to all stakeholders. One of the issues that has been happening throughout the region and globally is that countries have been premature with their opening of their airports and subsequently ended up canceling flights because of stringent conditions and requirements they were placing on their visitors. What the other part that we are looking at for the airport currently is to allow travel between our sister islands, namely Saba, Statia, Curacao, Bonaire, Aruba, as well as Anguilla and St. Bart's. In the next phase of it, up until that point that we open the airport, we'll be looking at travel between the islands that are considered COVID-19 free. This is now currently being worked on. In regards to the de-escalation of the businesses and the reopening of the additional entities, the guidelines have been published for several entities in the phase 3. This information is available on the government website under the COVID-19 opening plan for any persons interested in this. The list is quite extensive, but it includes bars, retail stores, laundromats, nail salons, barbershops, which is why everyone is looking so sharp these days, and religious services and marine services. In regards to the return of students, this is something that we have been actively working on over the few days because students and residents are trying to return home. The conditions that were previously mentioned about sourcing a hotel for them to come back and being in quarantine is one of major concern. When we look and contact our sister islands, the repatriation of persons back to those islands resulted in positive cases that were luckily tested in quarantine hotels. The requirement for repatriation was that, and it is one that has been agreed upon and approved by VSA as their conditions for anyone coming home between the period of June 1st to the 30th. Last week's press briefing, I remember that we were working on the marine protocol, and the focus of the ministry has been shifting into allowing visitors to come into the island in a controlled manner. We did finalize the protocol last week with the assistance of Yacht Agents, Marine and Trade Association, and we approved it, which is why you're seeing a little bit of activity happening along the Simpson Bay, within the Simpson Bay Lagoon. The protocol allows vessels to come to St. Martin waters, and marinas are also under the condition of the 14-day quarantine. In order, if the persons want to remain on St. Martin, they have to go into a 14-day quarantine. The marine protocol specifies that if they want to, sorry, I get a notice that I'm breaking up, so I'm just going to go back to the protocol, the quarantine requirements. If the crew of any boat has to remain on the island, they are required to quarantine for 14 days. If they are coming to the island to take the boat off the island, the conditions are different because they're leaving the island. So the quarantine is null and void because they have to go out of the island to take their vessels back in time, since we're already now in hurricane season. In terms of the tourism and economic diversification, the tourism office is working actively on a marketing plan that to basically passing on the message that we are prepared and we are safe to open. That is being done in conjunction with VSA and streamlining all the communications that are going to be sent from the hotels, from the businesses, saying that we are safe to open, and here is where we're ready to receive you. Lastly, I would like to remind the business community and our residents that we are indeed in hurricane season. We urge you to take steps to protect yourself and your families and prepare your surroundings for the hurricane season. Our ability to bounce back after a natural disaster is essential to our economic success. Thank you all very much, and I remain open for any questions.
Minister DeRever for your opening remarks. At this time, I would like to invite the Minister of Public Housing, Spatial Planning, Environment and Infrastructure, the Honorable Egbert Duran, to address you. Minister Duran, you have the floor.
Good morning to you, Ms. Roach. Good morning to the Honorable Prime Minister, my colleague ministers, members of the media, and a special good morning to the people of St. Martin. I have a few brief updates. The Ministry of Environment has procured a Caterpillar wheel front loader that has been purchased through the Emergency Debris Management Project of the NRPB. The main purpose of this latest piece of heavy equipment will be for the transportation of the applicator used to cover the waste periodically. This will avoid the birds, the bugs, the insects from having access to the waste on the landfill. The regular usage of the cover will also mitigate and prevent the surface fires. This heavy equipment will support and the continued much needed improvement of the landfill operations on the Pond Island, and will also be used for other ancillary activities on the site. In regards to the hurricane season of which we're currently in, that started on Monday, we would like to urge the community to take the necessary precautions for any storm that we might face. The ministry has recently published an article regarding the 2020 hurricane cleanup, which is scheduled to take place between the months of July and August. I would like to advise everyone to take notice of the schedule that will be published for the hurricane cleanup and use the opportunity to dispose of unwanted items that can prove to be a hazard in the event of a storm. This cleanup will be rounded off right before the peak of the hurricane season and will also be continued. Last week, Friday, May 29th, the Prime Minister and my colleague ministers and myself honored many frontline workers for their hard work during this pandemic and their dedication as well. Today, I wish to once more express my appreciation to all the frontliners and at the same time recognize all essential staff. I wish to recognize you for the hard work and the long hours that you put in, taking care of those around you, even though many times are unappreciated. What you do, although often seen as common, is actually very special in so many ways. To the people of St. Martin in general, I salute you as well, and I must say that I have much respect for you. For the most part, you have displayed a great level of maturity during these very difficult, intense times. Even though you had to adapt to many restricted measures you were not accustomed to, you took it serious and you did your part as you were asked to do so by the representatives of this country. As far as it concerns the fight against COVID-19, I must admit it is much still unknown. But as a proud St. Martiner, I am confident that together with the rest of St. Martin out there, we will work hand in hand towards getting our economy back on track. I show gratitude, respect, and understanding to one and all. One love. I would also like to say that as a people, we were faced with some difficult times. We are in regular meetings with my colleague minister, especially the Minister of TIAT, in efforts to build back this economy. And definitely, we will bounce back. St. Martin will rise again. That will be all for now, Ms. Roach. I look forward to any questions that members of the media might have. Thank you very much. Thank you, Minister Duran, for your opening remarks. At this time, I would like to invite the Prime Minister and Minister of General Affairs, the Honorable Jacob Sturgeon. Prime Minister, you have the floor.
Yet. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, Prime Minister, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Roach. Thank you to all my colleague ministers and to the members of the media. Good morning to one and all. Good morning, people of St. Martin and everyone within the sound of voice this morning, June 3rd, 2020. I would like to say that on Friday, to segue it into what or off of what my colleague minister mentioned, on Friday, May 29, 2020, the Council of Ministers hosted our first Frontline Heroes Appreciation Tour to thank the courageous frontliners and the various entities for their commitment in ensuring that the government could mitigate and contain the spread of COVID-19. First of many thank yous to come, and I would like to encourage each and every one who knows of a frontliner that requires or needs to be honored on a personal level to recommend that and to do so, even from your own place, because we can all lift each other up. At each location, the respective minister, as Minister Duran just mentioned, under which these entities fall, gave words of thanks for the commitment in ensuring that we could actually do what we did. The ministers were accompanied by children, not each location, but we had a total of 4 or 5 children. We had a budding nurse, an aspiring policeman, fireman, as well as doctor that visited and passed on their wish to be the next to rule, to be the chief of police even, and the chief of the fire department when they handed over those certificates of appreciation. And it was for me a blessing to have these children who are our future and who we are grooming today to follow their dreams. As we have deactivated our EOC on Friday, May 29th, it was decided that we would deactivate, and as such, each minister is carrying full responsibility for all actions as we move forward. As stated in my final national address on the COVID-19 developments, which was held on Saturday, May 30th, we have been diligently as a Council of Ministers working and preparing for the recovery stage for some time now. And as Minister Tiat, as well as Doran Irion and Richardson mentioned, prior, we will build on the exceptional work of the EOC and their support teams, as they also form part of the individual ministers' ministerial teams. In fact, key players. We must move from disaster mode to recovery mode. This requires us to change our thinking. We are no longer floundering. We are no longer trying to find a solution to something that is happening, but ensuring that what we want to happen happens, and happens in the way we want it to. The multidisciplinary group of the EOC will continue to remain available to the Council of Ministers and their respective ministers for additional advice, updates, etc. As the hurricane season begins, I'd like to take this opportunity to remind the public that preparation is key. Let me remind you, preparation is key. And the EOC continues to monitor the hurricane season and has already submitted its plans on Monday, June 1st to the Parliament. Of course, these plans are confidential and for the perusal of Parliament only, but of course we will update and when questioned as necessary as to what the population needs to do in preparation and what government is doing also in preparation to ensure you and your family are protected. But of course, we must keep in mind that COVID-19 and hygiene measures must be followed daily to protect yourself and your family and should form part of your preparation also for the hurricane season. Do not become complacent this hurricane season. Prepare carefully, calmly, remain vigilant, and stay informed via the official government information channels for instruction throughout the season. When preparing your disaster kit and your grab bag, so a grab bag is something you should have to be able to move in the case something happens to your home or in case you need to evacuate prior to or during the hurricane. Ensure that that bag has hand sanitizer or alcohol, soap bar or liquid soap, masks, and 2 cloth face coverings for each person. Disinfecting wipes or general household cleaning supplies to disinfect surfaces. These are all COVID-19 requirements besides all the usual necessities such as water, batteries, flashlight, radio, medicine, non-perishable foods, etc. It is really, really important that we do not take life for granted and always be prepared at all times. I know many made fun of my eat crackers and sardines statement way back in March, but I would like to tell you that we must always ensure that we have non-perishable foods, at least that can last up to 2 weeks, as we never know how long it will take. And even though we have de-escalated EOC, we are down to just one person who is still COVID positive at the moment. I really want the people of St. Martin to be vigilant so that we do not have a resurgence. I will take this opportunity also through this press briefing to thank the 11 emergency support functions ESF coordinators, especially the multidisciplinary task force that were the key ESF coordinators and their support teams, all the support teams, the disaster coordinator Clive Richardson and the EOC back office for their unwavering commitment in shaping the decisions and advising me moving forward back then about the decisions needed that enabled St. Martin to collectively, together as one, contain the spread of COVID-19. Thank you also to His Excellency Dr. Anders Eugene B. Holliday, our public prosecutor, Mrs. Miriam Mall, and the Dutch military representative, Raymond Witteveen, who served as observers during our EOC meetings. I also would like to thank all of the ministers for their undying support, together with their staff, together with the ministries, all of the government officials, inspectors who have played such a great role and will continue to carry us through. I'd like to thank the support staff within my cabinet as well for their tireless efforts in ensuring that I was equipped to take all the necessary decisions and communicate them to the public. And for that, I have to say a huge thank you to DCOM. You guys totally rock. And you've diversified our message in print, in word, in video, in short quips, in WhatsApp messages. And I think this way we were able, in various languages, that we were able to meet the needs of our public. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Today, this afternoon, in my capacity as Minister of General Affairs, I'll be attending a public meeting of Parliament. We're in the second round. This has gone back and forth several times, but this time, hopefully the last, to handle the national ordinance on the revision of pension for the civil servants. This will amend the national ordinance. The national ordinance will amend the age limit, as well as repeal the long-term allowance regulation of 1943. So it's been long overdue. We've held many, many meetings, as you know, related to the current conditions, as well as previously pertaining to the necessary budget cuts Government of St. Martin would have to take as a result of us having much less liquidity, as far as the Minister of Finance has mentioned before, up to a quarter of our usual income. As such, we held meetings. We've had 4 to 5 meetings with our unions. The first two were held virtually, and whereby we talked about proposals which were rejected by the union. And thereafter, of course, we all know that the Dutch conditions were put forth, whereby our civil servants, as well as many others, have been affected, and we are currently filling in those via the meetings we hold and by the agreements that we have finally achieved by confirmation of the unions on June 1st. So we look forward to moving forward. We know that it's not a good time, and of course, it was never the wish of government to hurt anyone. But I must say, in an effort as good corporate citizens, good society of citizens to look out for the weakest among us, I think it is only fair that we who have received some assistance to be able to pay salaries and allowances, etc., are able to contribute also, so that we can help those who have nothing. So I thank you for your understanding, civil servants, as well as all those in the government-owned companies who also will be feeling the effects to some degree, but definitely not to the degree that the private sector is currently feeling it. Based on the latest available data provided by Collective Prevention Services, CPS, epidemiologist Dr. Raisa Chonkomfat for yesterday, May 31st, and as a matter of fact, I was just recently updated. So let's say for today, June 3rd, in the coming days, St. Martin is expected to be free of COVID-19. However, the 77 positive cases, 62 have recovered, 61 has recovered, and we have just one positive case in the last 37 days. I think it is 62 because we updated that one of the two that were still considered positive, one has recovered and returned home, but the other, unfortunately, has been readmitted to St. Martin Medical Center as his underlying medical condition has worsened. Not necessarily his COVID-19, but his underlying medical conditions. But therefore, it is still not, we cannot say he has recovered. The government of St. Martin takes this opportunity to remember the 15 souls lost to COVID-19, and to pray for strength and courage for the families, loved ones and friends who are left to mourn. We wish the patient still in hospital and still COVID positive at this moment, as well as his family, much strength and love as you cope during this most difficult period. Our prayers remain with you, and I ask the population of St. Martin to continue to pray that we do not have a resurgence and that we never have to feel this way again for another patient. Though we know that the strong can easily survive this, these are some of the reasons that we have to remain vigilant. I believe Minister Tiat already spoke about the changes to the regulation, but I just wanted to remind that our curfew has been changed from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. Businesses are allowed to be open until 10. However, by 11 p.m. still, persons should be off the public roads. Our phase 3 is expected to last for 2 weeks, and we do not want to have to scale back. We do not want to have to close back and shut down our country because it will leave us vulnerable. Vulnerable to be stepped on by those who have the funds to assist us, and we do not want that. So as we look for ways to become more financially viable, I ask the people of St. Martin to remember that it is your behavior and your discipline that has brought us out. The virus remains a threat around the world. One never knows who may have been negligent in their behavior or hygiene habits, so you must protect yourself. Do not enter places where the guidelines aren't being adhered to. Do not do business with people who do not put your health first. In this way, they will learn. And if these people persist, call the police, report it. Negligence is what will cause the virus to spread. And as I said before, we are our brothers and sisters' keepers, and to keep us all safe, we have to do what is right. Though restaurants and bars and churches are open, and it is uncanny that I have to mention bars and churches in the same sentence, these are some of the highest risk places where people can gather. Protect yourselves. Keep yourself safe from COVID-19 by having proper face mask usage, keeping a proper social distance. We've mentioned it over and over again. This should be like a mantra in your head. 2 meters, you should be able to gauge what is 2 meters. Hand washing often, coughing into your sleeve or into your jacket, or keeping your mask on and doing your best to cover it as much as possible. Limit hugging, handshaking, and kissing to people who you know the status of or people within your family. This is our new normal. It hurts us to not be able to hug and love and console people, but at the end of the day, we are protecting our health. I have a vision for St. Martin. I would like to remind you that as we move from where we are, St. Martin is going to be, but I'm saying it as is because what I think is what will happen. What you think is what will happen. We are a multi-pillar economy, allowing for each and every one of our citizens to grow, where we have opportunities that can empower each and every citizen of St. Martin with your own determination and strength of mind and your actions to progress to the next level from wherever you are. We can build this St. Martin that we love together. Be blessed. Thank you, Olaika. And I apologize. It's been a rough couple of weeks.
It's okay, Prime Minister. We're all human. Thank you so much for your opening remarks. If you've just joined us, you are watching the live Council of Ministers press briefing. Thank you for joining us. We will now move on to the question and answer session. Stephen Cerulean of PJD2 Radio, if you're there, you have the floor. Please unmute your mic.
Good morning to you, Prime Minister. Good morning to you, ministers as well. My question is for the minister as shareholder of GB, Egbert Duran. GB yesterday, minister stated that they will resume disconnection of clients for outstanding bills as of June 30th. The company announced in March, I think it was, that it would not be disconnecting its cost to consumers' light and water for the time being, and then indicated it is in effort to alleviate the burden on households and businesses in midst of the global COVID-19 crisis. It would be granting, as I said prior, that consumers across the board 6 months relief from the lower fuel clause. Obviously, Minister, the announcement yesterday means that GB is diverting from its prior agreement. As shareholder representative of the company, how do you intend to intervene in this matter?
Good morning once again to you, Stephen, and the people of St. Martin. Thank you very much for your question. A very good question indeed. I personally was a bit taken aback seeing the article yesterday that was published by the management of GEBE. I made some phone calls to inquire what is the current stance. To be honest, I would have dealt with it different. Just to give an example, we already have so much individuals within the community that are hurting, and they are also indicating the fact that, the bills are too high. So before saying that we're going to disconnect, I believe a proper awareness should be brought forward and clarity to the people within the community to understand the reason why the bills are the way they are, and then we could start to talk about disconnection. In regards to the article that was posted in regards to 6 months relief and not being disconnected, I just want to clarify one thing. I read the article this morning, and the 6 months relief is tied to the fuel clause and not with the disconnection. However, as I reiterated before, I believe the right thing to do, of which I will communicate to them, will be to clarify first the situation at hand, which is the clarity that our constituents seek in regards to the amounts in the bills. So once clarity is brought there, then we could start to talk about disconnection. And one thing is very important to note as well is the fact that they are highlighting the payment plans. But first, I believe, again, clarity should be brought in regards to the numbers in the bill, of which I will follow up. I've personally seen maybe 20 bills in the last week, comparing them back and forth, going over it with my cabinet, cross-referencing the numbers. Some make sense, some we are still debating. So it is definitely something that we are dealing with as a government. Yesterday, I also indicated to the Prime Minister that we need to call a shareholders meeting in order for us to determine what we are going to do in regards to these bills and how we're going to deal with them. So it definitely has the full attention of the Council of Ministers. I also spoke to the Minister of TIAT as well. So just want the public to be rest assured that we understand what's going on and we're going to figure it out, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible, as soon as I get more clarity. Thank you very much, Stephen.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Stephen, for that question. I would now like to invite Judy Fitzpatrick of the Daily Herald. You have the floor.
Thank you, Olaika, and a very good morning to everyone. I know my connection was not that good this morning. Is it okay now? Can you hear me?
You're good, Judy. We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. And my first question would be for Minister D, and it's a clarification and a question. Minister, you indicated that the planned reopening of the airport is for July 1st and the internal deadline for June 15th. Can you explain what you mean by internal deadline? And can you also clarify whether the July 1 opening is for the surrounding islands? And if that is the case, has a target already been set as to when we can expect to welcome airlines from other countries, big countries, Europe, the US, for example?
Thank you, Ms. Fitzpatrick, for the question and for allowing me to clarify. What I mentioned was that we were looking at July 1st to be the earliest date that we can open the airport. That earliest date is contingent that everything on the island holds steady in terms of no new cases. It is coming in as we get guidelines from the Ministry of VSA to make sure that we're enforcing the protocols that we have in our public spaces, in the businesses. It's a joint effort that's going to happen across Justice, TAYAT, and the health inspectors. We are going to share the responsibilities of going out in the public and making sure this is adhered to before we can even think of opening up to extra persons coming back onto the island. So the language was very specific because as I referred to some of our neighboring islands who were very eager to mention June 1st as their opening date for Americans without any requirements before arriving to the island. What subsequently happened is that when we approached the June 1st date, the airlines canceled those reservations. What was happening on the side of St. Martin, as we were trying to control and manage this pandemic, we were still determining what was the best date for us to open up. Economically, it needs to happen soon. Health-wise, they would love to push it to later. And we have to find the perfect balance now with what we can actually sustain before we open up. So the earliest date is July 1st as our communication to the outside world, which would be to everyone. If any changes happen for travel between the sister islands and COVID-free islands, that would be determined now in the next 27 days before July 1st. The date can be pushed forward, but it depends on how the island is going in that meantime. I believe you asked me about a June 15 internal deadline. That June 15 is to make sure that if we have any requirements to the outside world, that is explicitly shared and stated with them before, so that we can avoid having an issue like the other countries who had the airlines cancel on them at the very last minute. Hope that clarifies your question. Thank you again.
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Minister DeWeaver, for your response. I would now like to invite Lyndon Brown of BCN TV. You have the floor.
Good morning to the people of St. Martin and to the ministers that are here today. This question will go to the Prime Minister. Minister, this question seems to be top story. Churches have regret that they have not been classified. Are you hearing me?
Yes, Lyndon, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, they are saying that they have not been classified as essential. Prime Minister, because they are saying that they have been making a lot of contribution to the community of St. Martin, and they feel that they are being restricted. But I don't want to say what I heard on the street, Prime Minister. Could you make it clear again the different category of worship? What will be for churches to do? What time they will have to worship? About the social distance. Do you have a document that you can just outline to the public so that we all can understand what is the requirement of churches here at St. Martin?
Good morning, and thank you for that question. I believe since the Minister of VSI isn't present, I'll take the question because As EOC has been deactivated, all the ministries are the ones dealing with what falls within their ministries. The guidelines for churches has been published, and it is on our website for churches and religious organizations. Churches are places where people gather in large groups, where people are sharing lots of love, hugging and kissing, and sharing the host. Sometimes they drink from the same cup, etc., in different religions. And so therefore, it is not that we do not consider them essential, we consider them high risk. As they are high risk, we expect that they will be able to follow the guidelines. They were mentioned in phase 3 because we left the higher risk groups for phases 3 and 4. They have received their guidelines. We moved back the opening of phase 3 from the 1st of June to the 30th of March, which allowed for some places that normally worship on Saturday and Sunday. However, they didn't get enough notice to prepare. So many are preparing for the coming weekend or even during the week. Some have services during the week, and they're encouraged to go to www.stmartingov.org/coronavirus. The website is still there. The button for coronavirus is still there, and you will find the guidelines clearly, explicitly written. Any church or worship group that does not understand them should contact the Ministry of VSA and speak with Joy Arnell, the SG, or directly with the minister's office to ensure that you have the guidelines or that they are properly in. No, don't call the minister's office. The inspectorate are the ones that will carry out the inspections to ensure that you have lived up to your guidelines, right, Minister DeWeaver? And it's not it's a business also. So Minister of VST should also do their inspections. As long as the high risk groups mentioned in phase 3 and 4 have lived up to their obligations to protect the public as well as the staffers, they will be able to do what they have to do. What we have noted over the time, and I know I'm answering longer than I should because I was looking at the notes and okay, there's too much for me to read. So you have to go to the guidelines yourself. But many churches have adapted and have online services. They have online prayer groups. They do Zoom church meetings, etc. I have been worshiping with my church group, and you can do it at the time they're worshiping, or you could go back and worship after. So I think what we're learning with our new normal is that we can even reach more people, and our sick and shut-ins can now take part in our services. So COVID not only was a slap in the face, it was also an opportunity to adapt to our new technologies and use it to our advantage. Thank you for that question, Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Thank you, Lyndon, for that question. I would now like to invite Bibi Shah of SMN News. You have the floor.
Good morning. Would like to give me 1 second. I just need to tell the Prime Minister this. Prime Minister Jacobs, I encourage you to stand strong. I can see the emotions. You went through hell during the past 2 or 3 months. The critics were not nice. They were not easy. But I can assure you, based on the bases that I've touched, that you stood strong as a strong woman and leader in St. Martin. And I thank you already for your service. Minister Doran, my colleague asked you about GEBE and going back on their promise for the disconnection. Word is reaching me, also a voice note, that workers from the power plant already threatened a total blackout, lockdown, whatever you want to call it, by cutting off power should government insist on the cost-cutting measures for GEB workers. I'd like to know if you heard of this, if anything was communicated to you as a shareholder regarding the stance of GEB workers and the cost-cutting measures presented to them. Bear in mind, some of GEB workers were part of that walk-in last week, Thursday.
Thank you very much for your question, Ms. Shah. Good morning to you. You asked 2 questions. You asked a follow-up on the first one and the walkout. I'm not sure if you want to answer on the follow-up from the first question or solely based on the last question. Just for
I I want you to give me information about the voice note that is circulating from the power plant saying if any cost-cutting measures are implemented at GEBE and the workers, that they will shut down, put the island in total darkness. And if government was informed of this, because I know there was a shareholder meeting, I know about the voice note that came from a worker at the power plant. And I want to know if this information that they're going to disconnect the people and start punishing people is a reaction to the cost-cutting measures, because they had an agreement and they said in the next 6 months they wouldn't do anything.
Let's allow Minister now to answer the question. Minister Durant.
Okay. For me to reiterate on the first part of your question, as I stated before, I too was taken aback with the article that was published. So therefore, I did not have any prior discussions with the management board before publishing the article in relations to disconnection. I would have preferred to have had that conversation, because then I could have communicated, and then you have less room for interpretation, which in the first instance, when making the agreement to have relief, there was a meeting that was held with the former Minister of Romi. So I believe the proper way to do it is if you have a meeting on starting the relief and then ending the relief, should have a meeting as well. So just to clarify that first part, this did not take place. Nevertheless, we are here now and it no make sense to go back. I indicated that I spoke to the Prime Minister and also with the Minister of TIAT for us to organize a shareholders meeting, for us to really discuss with the management board what is going on with the bills, and if in any case any mistakes were made, so we can rectify them, and if not, so we can clarify how and what was done to come up with the numbers. Now, in relations to the second part of your question with a voice note and a potential threat to shut down and lock down and blackout, I have not heard this voice note. However, I will inquire with the management board and find out as soon as possible, specifically with the Chief Operations Officer at GEBE, and find out and get back and report to the people of St. Martin. So I have not heard this voice note, nor do I have any knowledge or ever heard anything in relations to a potential strike in regards to blocking out the island. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Duran. Thank you, Bibi, for your question. I would now like to invite Jeffrey Socker and Dr. Sock of Island 92 Radio. You have the floor.
Good morning, Prime Minister and Council of Ministers and everyone who's here. Thank you. And Prime Minister, a big round of applause from me. And I know that all of us feel the same way. It's not an easy time for anyone to be leading, for sure. My question is, first, I'd like to ask for clarification from Minister De Wever. She started by talking about the students that were abroad and looking to come home, and the internet kind of broke up a little bit in the process. And I was hoping that you might be able to clarify for us what the exact process is for students that are abroad that wish to come home to St. Martin, what they need to do. And then my question is for our Minister of Finance, Minister Irion, if he could please give us some clarity on when we can start to think we will see the lockdown payroll support funds be released for the first month. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sock. I just want to confirm if I am clear, because your question came through unclear as well. I got my part of the question, but I just want to make sure that I'm clear.
Sure. So the question is, if you could just please clarify for us the procedure for students that are abroad that wish to come home. What is the protocol? What do they need to do? And will there be a quarantine, et cetera? How do they coordinate that?
Thank you for that. And yes, I am able to clarify that answer. What has been happening since we had the shutdown is Foreign Affairs Department has been actively involved in trying to arrange repatriation for persons from all over the world, whether they were students or residents. And because there was some urgency with the students in in the US and Canada because of visa requirements and ESTA for the visitors, for the residents that are there. When it came, we also have students and persons that were stuck abroad, outside of Europe as well, coming through the Netherlands. And we have now a KLM flight that is coming for cargo every Friday schedule. And we have also the ability to allow students or persons that need to come back home can come on that flight. Now, the caveat here is that we are limited to the number of persons who can come home, because right now we have 35 rooms available in separate locations where they can quarantine. It was the condition by during EOC and supported now by VSA and everyone else that they have to quarantine for 14 days. The quarantine, the discussion that had already begun last week, is now what is being enforced, where anyone that goes into the hotel has to pay for it out of pocket. That's why it was super important that we came up with a general opening date, our earliest possible opening date of July 1st, so that persons that are stuck away had the option of saying, you know what, I'm just going to wait until that confirmed date of St. Martin opening to come to avoid this extra expense. But right now, while because we are still in the reopening phase, so it gives us some time for the rest of the month of June to see if there's any tweaking that is necessary in case the cases change. And that's why we're very now cautious and controlled in these next 27 days of June. Sorry, you're frozen, but I just wanted to reiterate the same procedures that were in place now during EOC still continues. There was a contact that was given from the Foreign Affairs Department, and they have a list of all persons, whether they're students or residents, that need to come back home. Again, the tourism office has been very, very helpful in contacting hotels to ask them if they are willing to provide rooms for quarantine. And I have to say thank you again to those hotels who have. Thank you for those that are still in the process of deciding, because we wouldn't be able to do it without them. So currently we are limited to 35 persons. And any repatriation flights from the US and Canada, that's also in the works.
Thank you, Minister DeWeaver. Thank you, Dr. Sock, for that question. We would now move on to the second and final round of questions. I would like to ask for the media to keep the questions very succinct, as we are coming up to our hour time limit for the broadcast. I would now like to invite Stephen Cerulean of PJ82 Radio. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Roach. My final question is for the minister responsible for TIAT. Seeing that St. Martin is currently preparing for the reopening of its airport, how many of the main airlines have already sought permission to reintroduce flights to the island? And if any, who are they, Minister?
Thank you for the question. The importance of us giving an opening date is so that the airlines can start opening their reservation systems. So it will still be the same airlines that we have been using all this time, from America, from Canada, and from Europe. That all of those questions are there. What we are doing is streamlining our opening date with the rest of the territory, with the rest of the Caribbean region, so that people understand that once they enter the island, they are welcome back to go back to their place. If they come to St. Martin for 2 weeks, they can go back to Dominica or Barbados in that same time period. So that is being worked on now. But all airlines are willing to come back to St. Martin as long as there is sufficient demand.
Thank you, Minister Weaver. Thank you, Stephen, for that question. Dr. Sock, by any chance, did I miss Minister Edion's question?
You did, but I can get him in round two if you'd like.
Okay, we'll do that. I would now like to invite Judy Fitzpatrick of the Daily Herald. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. I have two questions for Minister Irian. Minister, we are still receiving quite a few complaints from workers who are indicating that they don't know whether their employer has received payroll support. The communication is just not there and they don't know what to expect. So my question is, what, if any, measures are in place to ensure that the funds that employers receive actually go to workers and actually go to workers in a timely manner? And is there some way that, maybe in the name of transparency, the government can publish a listing of all of the employers that have received payroll support, to eliminate questions and so everyone can know and know what to expect? And with the economy opening up, we have now more motorists who are on the road. And my question is, what, if you can kind of give us an indication as to what alternatives government is considering to replace number plates? And those are my questions.
Good morning. Thank you for your questions, Ms. Fitzpatrick. The question pertaining to the employees, yesterday we had a complaint, for example, pertaining to income support, and then when we verified the information was correct. But what we are doing is asking employers to, and like I said in my opening statement, to be open and honest with the employees. And we are, though, looking at ways on being able to publish certain information. There are a couple of legal technicalities with us being able to publish companies and saying that they got the money in the amounts. So we are looking at ways that we could categorize companies maybe, and so forth. But yes, we are going to ramp up our awareness campaigns and finding ways to make sure that the companies are as transparent as possible. On the other end, we're also looking at employees who have gotten payroll support and are still trying to apply for the income support, which has been given, is one of the reasons for certain delays, because now we have to cross-check with the Labor Department and cross-check with SFA to make sure the persons aren't trying to double up on payments. And your last question, I believe, was related to the license plates. I want to know if you're referring to this year, so for the rest of the year, or you meant going forward?
Minister, I meant for this year because you mentioned to me a couple of weeks ago that government is looking at alternatives for persons who pay their tax for this year. So what is for this year? And if you so for next year, I would appreciate that as well.
So we are finalizing a solution for this year, given the situation with COVID-19 and so forth. Hopefully by the end of this week, we'll finalize a solution and advice is being written, and I'll be able to see more on Friday.
Thank you, Mr. Irian. Thank you, Judy, for that question. I would now like to invite Lyndon Brown of BCN TV. You have the floor. Lyndon? Okay, Lyndon Brown has left the meeting. Bibi Shaw of SMN News, you have the floor.
Thank you, Zuleika. Let me go directly to the Minister of Finance, and I'm going to continue where my colleague Judy left off. Minister, there are lots of employees, not one, not two, there are lots, that are claiming that, listen, they believe that their companies, and you mentioned the amount of companies that will receive payroll support, but there are a lot of employees that were not even paid for March or April. Some of them are saying that even though government said that if you get 80%, for example, payroll support, then the employer has to put the other 20%. This is not happening. There's some employers that are basically telling their employees, listen, if you want to get that 80%, then, and if they reopen, because a lot of stores haven't reopened, a lot of workers on Front Street, they're being victimized. They're called to work 6 to 7 hours nonstop for the 80%, not the additional. I can tell you about companies at the airport. Their workers have not gotten paid for April and May. We're in the month of June. how do we, get these employers, or, if you're not going to make the information public to say which company received payroll support, they will continue with this. What do we have in place? And secondly, companies that get their income solely from government, for example, work for government, provide service for government, they are also not getting payroll support. But they're also not being paid by government as yet. Government is late in paying them. How will this be handled?
Thank you for your questions, Ms. Shaw. Again, back to the question for the SSRP support and employees. One, they can come to the Labor Department for any disputes and will be investigated. I would also like the employers to know and remember that all businesses can be audited at the end of the program. So we will be auditing, especially any companies that are suspicious, companies that had employees that came into dispute, and for a lot more reasons. But I have mentioned before, we are currently looking at efforts to see how we could bring more transparency to the payment. We will be contacting all the companies that got payroll support, sending them an email again to be transparent with their employees. So hopefully things will be going a lot better in terms of communication in the next week. Oh, in relation to the question to government companies not being paid by SSRP because they're being supported by government. Since I came in, and I think that you noticed because a couple of companies also came to you in the past with payments and they have been paid so far. I'm trying my best to clean up all the backlogs of payments is one of the things I've been working on. But some companies also have tax issues or they haven't completed their services and so forth. But I am working on getting all the backlogs when it comes to payments cleaned up, because I do agree it's also unfair for companies. I know they have to think about their cash flow in their business, especially during these times. So I agree with that point, and we are diligently working on it.
Thank you, Minister Adrian. Thank you, Bibi, for that question. Jeffrey Stockman of aisle 92, you have the final question.
Okay, I can answer this question now.
Yes, you can.
All yours, Minister.
Okay, so the lockdown payroll support, it has been extended until June 5th, and we can expect payments to be executed next week. That's it?
That's it.
Okay.
And Dr. do you have a final question? Can you kindly unmute your mic, please?
I'm sorry. Very good. I'm good, Rolika. You guys hit everything on my list. So I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Stock. Thank you, members of the media. Prime Minister?
Yes, is that the end of the question and answer segment? Do I have an opportunity to respond to something that was said by two of our media houses?
Yes, Prime Minister, go ahead.
Thank you. I would like to thank Ms. Shaw. I know we've had our back and forths, and we will probably have some more in the future as we keep each other Catholic, as they would say. But I want to thank you for your words of encouragement, as well as, recognizing the hard work that has gone into, together with my EOC, ESF coordinators, keeping St. Martin safe, as well as with our members. I thanked everybody already, but thanks also to the media for sending out the truthful news, because a lot of times we get some melee, we consider it news. I think we need to start raising the bar as a country if we want to stand on our own feet and ensure that our media is accurate before it is publicized. I want to also thank Dr. Sock for his applause and his continued encouragement as well. And I want to say this, that a lot of people, somebody said about the naysayers and whoever and the bashers, and it's uncanny that my words and the way I've handled this has been compared to other female leaders around the world, and that internationally media houses are calling me for interviews, etc., while my of the 40-something thousand people, a handful with loud mouths get to determine the weather of how the sentiments here on the island. So I'd like to encourage those with positive voices to raise their voices as well. Negative attitudes, I've learned through my life of almost 52 years that negative attitudes come from fear and hurt. So I don't hold it against people who express fear and hurt and refuse to be positive. I will continue to use the opportunity I have to lead this country, to spread love, to spread light, to spread positivity through my thoughts, my actions. And if at times I fail, I'm not afraid to say, I am sorry, I made a mistake. So with that being said, I am gladly sharing the reins of taking this country forward with the other 6 members in the cabinet, the Jacobs cabinet, together with the people of St. Martin, each and every person, we will make a difference. So let's just do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Members of the media, this does bring us to the end of the question and answer session. Thank you for joining us. Honorable Ministers of the Council, members of the media, radio listeners, and online viewers, this does bring us to the end of the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, June 3rd, 2020. For rebroadcast, be sure to tune in to St. Martin Cable TV, Channel 115, St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9 FM, the official Facebook page of the Government of St. Martin, and the YouTube channel Government of St. Martin. For video on demand, log on to the official government's website at stmartingov.org. On behalf of the Department of Communication and the Government of St. Martin, I'm Rolika Roach, and wishing you a pleasant day further.